welcome to Fake Presidents, a real podcast about, well, you know.
Each episode will take a deep dive into a fictional American president from pop culture to see just how much fiction there really is.
I'm Eric Buckman, a former political consultant turned striking TV writer.
And I'm Ben Oren, a former journalist, sometimes speechwriter, and all-the-time TV producer. I guess despite the strike, I don't know, that we got political off the bat, dude. Wow.
I think we've established by now you do a lot of work in the unscripted realm.
Yes.
And today, we're going to go back into the world of TV, speaking of television and scripts and striking and all that stuff, with the new Marvel series, Secret Invasion, hot off the Disney Plus. The first 2 episodes went live. We're right there with you. We're not going to wait till every episode drops and then do like, an analysis then after the fact. No, we're going to cut in live while they're dropping so that we can not just cover what's going on, but we can speculate about what might happen in the future. Something we don't usually do. There is no future for us usually.
It just is. It just exists. It's the nostalgia. No nostalgia here. Brand new stuff. We're going to talk about Secret Invasion in a bit because first, Eric, I'd really like to take a step back and talk about For All Mankind.
For All Mankind, last summer's TV talk.
Yeah, I got nostalgic for that. I'm sorry.
Yes, the one where I watched it and you didn't.
Yes, but then I did watch it, and I want to talk about it.
Well, for those of you with chapter markers at home who still don't want any For All Mankind spoilers, you can skip ahead to the Secret Invasion part of this podcast episode if your podcast player does not have chapter markers, which it really should. Switch to a podcast player that has chapters. I'm going to insert future me saying an amount of time that you can skip ahead. So if you don't want For All Mankind talk, go to the 14-minute mark now.
I love this choose your own adventure take on our podcast. If you want to explore the cave, turn to page 22. If you want to pet the baby rhinoceros, turn to page 4.
My name is Andrew Shepard, and I am the president.
I want to talk about For All Mankind again because I'm like 2.5. I'm into the 3rd season.
Okay.
And I'm really enjoying it. Like the 2nd season went to places I didn't expect. The 2nd season, the space race becomes like Star Wars for real. Like World War III almost breaks out because of shots fired on the moon. And it's crazy because at one point, I didn't even realize this until like a couple of episodes in, that one of the astronauts heading to the moon with our main character, Ed Baldwin, is Sally Ride.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't piece that together at all, that Sally Ride was a character on the show.
The show does a really good job of making sure the iconic American astronauts still remain iconic in some way. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, they still made it to the moon, you know, in a very dramatic fashion in the first episode of the series, even though they didn't wind up beating the Russians. You know, Sally Ride's still in there. They're very good at incorporating, basically paying tribute to the real heroes of the American space program.
But this Sally Ride is a Sally Ride I never would have expected.
Oh, yeah, she pulls a gun on.
She pulls a gun! She pulls a gun in the space shuttle.
On her fellow crewmates.
On her fellow crewmates, on Ed Baldwin. So somebody wrote, must have written, then to stop Ed from firing missiles at the Russians in space, Sally Ride pulls a gun on Ed, and they have a standoff in space. That's insane.
Yeah. And you know they have enough NASA consultants that someone read that, like, yeah, I can see her doing that.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Live ammunition on there. Live ammunition on the moon. It was, I'm not even going to spoil the insane stuff that happened on the moon. But I want to fast forward now to season 3 because we talked about that in the podcast where, you know, we talk about one of the astronauts, Ellen Wilson, becomes the president in 1992, and she's the first fake president in this world because up to this point, even though history has diverted, we get President Teddy Kennedy, we get President Ronald Reagan starting in the 70s, we get President Gary Hart for 2 terms. And then in 92, we still have Bill Clinton running as a Democrat, but we have our closeted lesbian astronaut hero, Ellen Wilson, running as a Republican. And I don't think, after watching everything, I don't think Bill Clinton still would have been the candidate in 92 following a Gary Hart presidency.
It's a bit like hitting the repeat button.
Yeah, it feels like repeat. And also knowing who the opponent is, I don't think you would put, using air quotes right now, like a draft dodger up against a recent American hero. Ellen Wilson in the first season saves the day by getting Ed Baldwin off the moon when shit's going down. She's just this stud of an astronaut. She's gone back to the moon several times. Yeah. She's a leader. She's a liaison essentially she's elevated to a cabinet position during the Reagan administration, his liaison to NASA. So I was thinking, like, who would be the right kind of Democrat to run against Ellen in 1992?
And are we talking about within the world of the show, including those characters, or real world political figures?
I was only thinking about real world political figures because it came across to me that many of these astronauts anyway were leaning more Republican throughout this run. So I thought maybe like John Kerry would be the kind of guy who would get a shot a bit earlier than he does in real life. You know, he's a war hero. Joe Biden, perhaps. You know, I was thinking John Kerry because he's a war hero. He wasn't yet with Teresa Hines yet, so he wasn't like this effete elitist who windsurfs in the Caribbean.
With his ketchup bottles.
Yeah, he's more of like this army brat who served in combat, served in the Senate, and now would be his time to serve in the White House.
And he won't get swift-boated.
And he wouldn't get swift-boated yet. I mean, he still could. I mean, as we see, like, Lee Atwater exists in this world, like, dirty politics probably definitely exists in this. Maybe not dirty politics does, because Gary Hart, 2 terms. No monkey business.
It would have been interesting if what they had done is basically inverted the reputations of the two parties. And so you have a Republicans pushing for green energy in 92, and you have a Democrats who are basically doing their version of the Willie Horton ads. Basically, they're swift-boating her to derail her candidacy, finding astronauts to say, oh, she wasn't really a hero. She didn't really go into space.
Actually, if they did their due diligence and dug in, they probably could have figured out she's a lesbian. But so they didn't do that.
Oh, you mean followed her home from work?
No, I mean, I'm saying that as dirty. I'm saying that as not somebody who's like lesbian. I'm saying it more like politics is dirty. In the early 90s, an out candidate probably wouldn't go very far, specifically an out candidate in the Republican Party. Just guessing. That's just me. I don't know. So I think what you do to combat this candidate, Ellen Wilson, astronaut, hero, she served, is you need to find somebody within the Democratic Party who can trump all those, who could almost beat her at that game and can appeal to the middle, perhaps, in a way, and maybe even pull some Republicans over, because Republicans, I'm going to say, might be a bit misogynistic, might not believe that a woman is necessarily up to the job if given the right candidate to vote for. So what astronaut became a Democratic senator from the state of Ohio?
John Glenn.
John Glenn. John Glenn runs for president in 92 against Ellen Wilson. The space race. The American space race. CNN would go fucking nuts over this. Are you kidding me?
Are you deep enough in season 3 to understand that basically NASA has replaced like the FBI or the Justice Department as like the most political agency within the federal government? Like it's in the same way, like, Waco for the FBI and Ruby Ridge, like how like basically now all the conspiracies are very NASA focused.
No, I'm not. Okay. I'm like 3 episodes in.
Okay, I won't want to spoil anything then. But okay. I like that idea of NASA being like the hub of pop culture, pop politics. Populism.
Well, it's also the hub of creating the mythical American hero.
Yeah.
And especially because they're heroes in a sense where they're not killing anybody. Well, some astronauts did kill people on the moon, whatever. But they put themselves in harm's way for the greater good. It makes sense why somebody like Ellen Wilson can run for office. It makes sense why I think somebody like John Glenn was able to be a senator And it makes sense why we haven't seen astronauts become national names anymore, because that hasn't been the focus of our country for the past, 30 years?
Yeah, I dread the day that we start to get our first privately funded missions to the moon and to Mars, because it will just be a reality show at that point.
Whoa. And what's the problem with that, Eric Buckman? I'm sorry, Mr. Snooty Pants, you have problems with reality shows.
What I mean to say is we might not be celebrating the astronauts for their accomplishments as much as we might be celebrating them for some of the more superficial aspects of fame that might go wrong.
Well, we saw that on the show. Tracy.
Yes.
It becomes the face of NASA because, well, she did something heroic, but she was also absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, she wears and Carson.
She certainly fills out that astronaut suit in a way that other astronauts don't. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, Ben. Step off the launch pad, please. Abort.
But yeah, so I just want to say that I really enjoyed the series. I do think that having Clinton run in 92 in this scenario, I don't think it would have happened. I think that's where, historically, I think they wanted to just do something, perhaps even to have the footage that they can manipulate to have like fake debates. It was helpful. But I think, John Glenn would have been the guy to beat Ellen Wilson in 1992.
I have another name for you. I like where you're going with military.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and presume that in this world, if we see astronauts breaking right, we might see military breaking left.
Okay.
And so there is a world where in 1992, the Democrats put up General Norman Schwarzkopf.
Ooh, okay. Because he was sort of like apolitical.
He was. I mean, he got embraced by the right because that's who was in office at the time. He was like George H.W. Bush's, military strategist. But if there had been a Democrat in office and he had wound up in any way leading, what was perceived to be a very successful effort overseas for something, he would have the same fame, but without the ties to the Republican Party. And especially if he's not a fan of, say, green energy, which is where the Republicans are going. Like, I could totally see them poaching some military people because, Ellen Wade, she's not the typical Republican.
I like that. Even like a Colin Powell or somebody who was more towards the center. Might find their way over to the Dems in the early 90s in this world.
Wasn't his thing, though, that he really had the problem that people said Obama had? Like, he was not born on U.S. soil. He was...
Really?
I thought he and...
There was a birther movement?
Well, I thought that because wasn't he born in the Caribbean? Like, I think there might have been a slightly more substantial claim that neither Colin Powell, and I think it also applied to John McCain, too, who's born, I want to say, near the Panama Canal.
Yeah, John McCain was. He was born in the naval because his dad.
Yeah, but that said, it's all BS because if your parents are American citizens, even just one American citizen, it doesn't matter where you're born. The dirt you're on.
Okay, well, we'll edit that part out, Eric, because our Q listeners, they don't subscribe to that. They don't subscribe to us for us to subscribe to that.
Got it. By the way, Q listeners, since y'all are still on Twitter, do some retweets. Help spread the word a bit. Do your thing.
Guys, especially now that you got all those beautiful blue check marks.
Oh, yeah.
Take him for a spin. What are you spending that $11 a month for?
This is a presidential favor.
Marvel's secret invasion. I feel like we shouldn't be talking about this, Ben. I mean, this is like a true conspiracy show.
Well, I don't know who I could really trust because anybody could be a secret invader.
Or, as this show presents it, anyone could be a secret lizard person.
You can't call them lizard people.
They call themselves lizard people.
Yeah, they can say that, Eric. You, as a white cis male, cannot just go around calling people lizard people.
Here's the thing.
And I don't care how many friends you have who are lizard people. They cannot empower you to do that because there are other lizard people out there. Oh, shit. I just called them lizard people. Man, it's interesting. Like, you think you're not the kind of person who would use the LP word. And then all of a sudden, like, when you're not thinking, and it makes you realize, this stuff is just like ingrained in you, and you have to unlearn the unconscious anti-alienism that you have from within, that you've learned probably from your parents. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, Dad. I probably learned it from you because you dropped like LPs left and right as a kid growing up. So,
I mean, here's the thing, Ben. The people out there who really do think there are actual lizard people disguised as humans among us would give us permission
that is
to
true.
use.
We're not talking about who lives underneath the Denver airport.
Yeah, that's one thing that does scare me about the series. I understand it's a comic book universe. I understand these are aliens, but considering there are actual conspiracy theories believed by actual people on this planet that, let's say certain religious groups happen to also be people with secret reptilian features hidden beneath fake skin, I do worry that this series might be making those people very happy right now. Because the actual conspiracy theory contends that actual lizard people disguised as humans, who all a great deal happen to be Jewish, have infiltrated the highest levels of society to institute some nefarious agenda.
But to be fair, they're confused again because Samuel L. Jackson is the person assigned to root them out. So already they're like, but it's a black person, and that makes me uncomfortable as well. So, they're really pushed into a corner with this one.
Yeah. All the people who are still doing the not my Nick Fury, because the original comic book Nick Fury looked more like David Hasselhoff.
Really?
Yeah. It used to be he's a white guy with an eye patch, and I think he was played by David Hasselhoff in one of the straight-to-video Marvel movies they were doing when they were like desperate for money.
Uh-huh.
The same way there was a Dolph Lundgren Punisher.
Yes, I was aware of that.
And then Spider-Man. No, Captain America.
Captain America and a really bad Fantastic Four, also, like a Roger Corman Fantastic Four.
Yeah, that one is pretty much, you can see bootleg digitized versions of a VHS tape that was circulating amongst like Comic-Cons and so forth. The actual Captain America is viewable. I saw it on cable not that long ago. Or maybe I say not that long ago, 20 years ago. Okay, a while ago. But it actually got airplay like on cable, and it does also feature a fake president. So that might be worth a visit. But the reason why we're visiting Secret Invasion in the middle of its run, Ben, is not just because it features a fake president.
No.
That caught us both by surprise.
Yes.
It's because that fake president is brand new to the MCU, which we've already covered.
We already covered President Ellis.
Yeah. William Sadler, Iron Man 3. His vice president was a not so good guy.
Nope.
And then we also know that there's an upcoming fake president. Played
Mr.
by
Harrison Ford.
Yeah, played by a one-time other fake president, President Marshall, who is going to be taking over the role of General/former Secretary of Defense Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. In at least one, I'm going to guess 2 movies.
2, at least, yeah.
I'm guessing he'll be in Thunderbolts and maybe the new Captain America movie.
Yes. But yes, we have a president. Who is our president, Eric?
Dermot Mulroney.
Dermot? There's no N in that. Dermot.
Anyway, President Kitson, played by Dermot Mulroney, our first time doing a Mulroney after doing 2 Dylan McDermotts. We get to finally cover him and a new president in the MCU. We get to cover it as it's happening. Before we jump in the Secret Invasion, though, because we're now doing Dermot Mulroney, I was curious. Has he ever played a president before? And it turns out he has.
He has?
He has. Dermot has already played a fake president in the Netflix series from 2020 called Messiah. Have you heard of this series?
No.
Lasted 1 season. That series has Michelle Monaghan investigating the mysterious appearance of a savior-like figure in the Middle East who's been shaking up the whole world with his Jesus-like powers. And so the big question of the series is he really the Messiah? Or is this dark-skinned man with an Arabic name really
is he basically like David Blaine?
Just a con man, yeah, or a magician, or someone trying to fuck with the world, or worse, does he actually have powers and he's the Antichrist?
Did he guess her card correctly?
I have not seen a second of it, but I can tell you, since it's produced by Mark Burnett and Roma Downey.
Oh, yes, okay.
Where this is probably going. And I can also tell you that Dermot Mulroney's president is President Young. And if you can't guess by the name in that series, he's playing a Mormon president. You know, a la Brigham Young.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's right. It's a world in which Mitt Romney becomes president, which makes, say this with me 5 times fast, which makes Dermot Mulroney a Roma Downey Mitt Romney.
Wow.
Get off my plane.
Let's get to today's main course. First 2 episodes of Marvel's Secret Invasion, where I think it's pretty to say that Dermot Mulroney's president is not a Mitt Romney clone. But that doesn't mean he's still not an imposter. You see what I did there?
Exactly. Well, I think in order for anybody to follow what we're going to talk about with this show, we need to provide just a touch of background. It's hard because the Marvel universe expands 30 plus movies and TV shows and specials, and it all flows into each other, and you got to remember stuff from like 5 years ago, and they don't even provide like a previously in this world so you can understand and remember stuff.
Oh, this series does do that. They just wait until episode 2.
And even then, not enough. Not enough. Yeah, a lot of this started in the when did that come out? Captain Marvel came out in 2018.
It came out in between Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah.
Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s. Nick Fury discovers that there's been this essentially a war going on between these 2 alien races, the Kree and the Skrulls. You think that the Kree are the good guys and the Skrulls are the bad guys, but you get the old flipperoony. Turns out the Skrulls are the good guys and the Kree are the bad guys, and the Skrulls, they kind of have green features and they have like sharp ears, and I don't know if they have a tail or not because they never take off their clothes. I don't know if you cut off their tail, it grows back. But what they can do...
Oh, I don't think things grow back when you cut them off, as established in episode 2.
That is true, in episode 2. That is correct. That is correct. But what we learn the Skrull can do is that they can they can shapeshift. They're all they're mystiques. It's a whole race of mystiques.
Yeah, mystiques if you change the color on your TV set, so that way everything has like a green tint.
And Mystique, of course, is from the X-Men series,
which has not been merged into the MCU yet. Although, for those who are listening to us for the first time and you're curious what other Marvel properties we've done, we did do an X-Men movie with the fake president at X-Men United. Check it out.
It would get very confusing if a Skrull scrolled into a Mystique or a Mystique mystiqued into a Skrull.
That has to have
happened. There's some fan fiction.
Yeah.
But, the Skrulls can shapeshift into whatever they would like. Whoever. Whoever. They have to see it.
They're not turning into like toilets or tables.
Not yet.
They're not hiding out as a planter.
Oh. We don't know. We don't know what happens in the rest of this series.
I was going to say they're not hiding its tree, but I guess technically there are tree races.
Groot. They could be a Groot.
Yeah, which I think they might be.
That might probably happen in the series.
So the Skrulls, they are refugees of this war. They lost the war with the Kree, basically. Lost their homeworld. And what we find out in Captain Marvel is a significant number of them are hiding either on Earth or floating above Earth looking for a place to live. And that movie ends with Nick Fury and Captain Marvel saying, "We gotcha.
We will find you a home."
Yeah. And then the series picks up 20 plus years later, and the home has not been found yet. And the Skrulls are yet another group of refugees now living on Earth, in addition to the Asgardians, who lost their homeworld in Thor Ragnarok and now live.
But people don't know the Skrulls are living on Earth.
Yeah, as we find out when Nick Fury is surprised to learn that Don Cheadle has been briefed on their existence. So, like many government conspiracies, this knowledge is only known at the highest level of the pyramid. And they established in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier that a large number of people who got blipped back into existence in Endgame are now also refugees, and angry refugees at that. In fact, angry refugees seems to be a familiar plot line in these Marvel TV series. And then that's where this series picks up. Nick Fury, he returns to Earth after spending a couple years building some Earth defenses in space, to protect us from the aliens out
Saber.
there, not the aliens from within. And so he winds up returning. He's also not just helping build this new defense system, he's also kind of running from what he views as his mistakes here on Earth. I think he blames himself for the whole Thanos thing. The whole point of the Avengers was to protect us from threats like Thanos, and it did not work. And I think he's also kind of pissed off that he's the only original Avenging cast member who got blipped out of existence at the end of Infinity War. Everyone else, all the people who were in the first Avengers movie,
every other OG
either
Avenger,
Shield person or Avenger. So that's what the series is about. It's about Nick Fury returning to Earth. His best buddy Talos, played by Ben Mendelsohn, who's a Skrull. His wife has been killed by some evil Skrulls who are basically trying to start World War III, inciting through terrorist events around the globe.
Why would they want to do that, Eric? What would a world war on Earth, how could that help the Skrulls?
What we find out is radiation doesn't affect them. So a nuclear war would actually make the world less hospitable for you and me. Wink, wink, Ben. You and me humans.
Yeah, of course. I do not want that. There's no way I could survive.
Yes, and then more hospitable for them. Although I was confused. I thought in the opening episode they were trying to stop dirty bombs from being detonated, but the bombs that we saw go off did not seem to be very dirty.
They're just bombs.
So I guess they're saving the nuclear material.
They're for the big 'em. That's for down the line.
Okay.
They don't need little stuff. They need big bombs.
That said, the inciting incident that basically, sets everyone ablaze, and quite literally in this series, is the end of the first episode. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen the first two episodes and you plan to, there'll be some light spoilers. We're not going to go that deep into the plot. We're not going to do every plot beat. We're going to focus on the politics. But that said, it ends with a Russian 9/11, because they very much specify 2,000 people die in these 3 bombs that go off in this rather public space, which is...
But it's Russia given the numbers. Based off of what we saw with our own eyes, I don't think that many people died.
Yeah, it was done by a guy named Gravik, alien guy named Gravik, who's one of the Skrulls who feels the most betrayed by the people on Earth, who's basically spearheading the effort to incite World War III. And at one point in the first episode, we do get to meet our new fake president, played by Dermot Mulroney.
Yes.
He's got one scene with a familiar face to the MCU.
Yes, James Rhodes, a.k.a. War Machine, who happens to be his advisor and is played by Don Cheadle.
Don Cheadle. And then in the second episode, no fake president, although he does have a presence, he's seen on screen, and he basically sends Don Cheadle as his emissary to represent the full might and influence of the American government. So what more do we need to say about the series?
I think we hit upon the relevant points. I think also that these bombs that went off in Russia, it's not that just that the Skrulls got these bombs to go off, is that they pinned the blame on the United States.
Yeah. So in this world, they have Americans against Russians who are being portrayed as being very Proud Boys-esque.
Yes, like an online group that had a very catchy name. It was something like the Americans Who Hate Russians group. Like, it was essentially that.
Yeah. Of course, that's the biggest break with reality is in America today, the paramilitary groups tend to secretly get their backing from Russia. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, they, at least on the surface, seem to really want to go back to the old days of the Cold War. They view Russia as America's greatest threat. So it's not Antifa. They're not the Proud Boys. They're this other thing that exists. And for some reason, the fact that these people who are not directly affiliated with the U.S. government are being framed for doing this terrorist event, it does blow back on America in a way that the Saudis who did 9/11 never actually blew back onto the Saudi government themselves. So there's already some disconnects with the real world that I will totally overlook because the MCU diverged from the real world, in 2012, as soon as those first attack on New York with the Kree
Yeah.
It was a Kree in that one. Happened in front of the whole world, and all of a sudden, everyone on planet Earth had to face the fact that we're not alone anymore. That said, the main message of this movie is that discovering we're not alone in the universe didn't unify us, as gets said many times here, especially by Sam Jackson in the second episode on the train episode, in the train scene, is we hate each other enough already. We can barely live with ourselves. There's no way we'd live with another species if the world found out that we were secretly being,
Yeah, we cannot live side by
inhabited
this right now. The Skrulls and the humans cannot live side by side.
Yeah, the Asgardians people seem fine with,
Well, they're just party. They like to party. They're fun.
but no one likes the Skrulls, which I actually buy that too, because Asgardians, they are what you see, and the Skrulls, they have an ability that I can understand would unnerve people.
They could literally blend into any situation.
Yeah. Interesting. So the Skrulls are basically doing a preemptive war then.
And not only that, not only does nobody know that the Skrulls are there, but the Skrulls, per a program set up by Nick Fury in the 90s, is that they've already infiltrated different parts of government and society across the board and essentially report back to S.H.I.E.L.D. about what they see. Because in this world, the guy who's on essentially their version of Fox, Shooter McGavin.
Yeah, another fake president.
Another fake president. Skrull.
Spy Kids too.
Spy Kids too. The Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes.
Skrull. The head of the United Nations? Or NATO?
NATO.
The head of NATO. Skrull.
Yeah. But yes, it's a council, a multi-ethnic council of Skrulls. I will say...
Well, a multi-ethnic, they chose to look that way.
Yes, but none chose to be Jewish. I'll at least give them
We don't know.
that.
We don't know what Shooter's packing.
We've highlighted a few ways that the politics don't totally line up with our politics, but there is one way where their politics totally line up with our world. And that is apparently Brexit still happens, like post-2012, attack on New York, aliens exist, superheroes are a real thing. People in Great Britain are like, yeah, we still want out of this EU thing. We want our blue passports back now more than ever.
More than ever. We got to fortify this island somehow.
Yeah, because there's an emergency security meeting of major world governments, and on the news they say that the 27 EU nations plus Great Britain. So we know that happened. And of course, you have all these heads of states who show up, and no President Kitson, Dermot Mulroney. They send.
Not President Kitson. Kitson's on a store in Beverly Hills, dude. Ritson.
Ritson? No, I need to. My glasses must be.
President Kitson runs Kitson's, and you could get really cool shirts that say like Team Brittany, Team Paris, Team Nicole, Team Gigi, Team Sandoval.
Now, I think what it was, I had just seen a movie in theaters and got to see the new Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning trailer, which I'd already seen online 1,000 times, but seeing on the big screen. And Kittredge is in it. He's the guy from the first movie who we thought was a bad guy, but really wasn't the bad guy. But he's the one who's at least saying, "In your mission, if you choose to accept."
Oh,
it.
yes.
Yeah, where were we? They've secretly infiltrated all levels of government. Where it gets a little confusing, at least the first 2 episodes, is they already did the infiltration without the nefarious means. Like, you get the sense going into it that all the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the Secretary General of NATO, they like living on Earth.
Yeah.
They like helping Nick Fury out.
Yeah.
They're doing their civic duty by using their powers for good in their mind.
Yeah, they have some good purpose, good gigs. The show's not called Secret Infiltration.
Yeah. But then by the end of the second episode, they've all been turned into the ideology of Gravik, who's like, now you're going to use your positions for bad. That said, while that's going on, we know Gravik is also doing his own replacements that aren't these replacements.
Correct.
In fact, I don't think the characters who are already established as Skrulls as the Prime Minister of Great Britain, I don't think they're replacements. I just think that's their identity.
Correct.
Yeah. Whereas what Gravik is doing is he's going around taking real people, kidnapping them, sticking them in like hyperstasis, stealing their memories, implanting them into Skrulls who now, when they impersonate a person and take on their identity, they're taking on everything in their head too. So they can fully become these people. And so that then takes me to what I think we need to chiefly speculate on, why everyone's tuning in. And that is, do we think this fake president is going to wind up being one of Gravik's imposters?
I would have to say 100%.
We already know there's a new president in the next movie to come out, or next, at some point next year or two. Yeah. So the idea of this Dermot Mulroney character being, even if he's not a Skrull, he might not survive the series.
And we don't know who his VP is yet.
We don't know who his VP is yet.
Could be Thunderbolt Ross.
That said, here's my theory.
Okay.
My theory is the whole reason why we have that one scene, because that's the scene we get in the first episode between War Machine and the POTUS. It doesn't really have a purpose to be there other than to let us know, oh, these characters are part of the series. And so the fact that they're the only characters.
Well, and also when Nick Fury returns from deep space from Saber, it's big news.
But we've seen so many movies and TV shows where you get the call from the White House. You mention you spoke to the chief of staff. The president's you don't actually film a scene there's one scene in a multi-level White House set. That's not cheap. Which I want to get into, by the way, because we see a lot of photographs, which totally confuses the party of this guy.
Yes.
Yeah. But before we get to that, my theory on speculation of who's the Skrull is, I definitely think that one of those two characters is a Skrull. It's either going to be, I think it's either going to be Don Cheadle or Dermot Mulroney. I think that's what that scene is. And right now, I think they want us to assume the president because of all the other world leaders, but they're keeping in their pocket a Don Cheadle reveal. And the reason why I say that is because in episode 2...
There was a small giveaway, I guess. I see where you're going, because there was also a small giveaway, because in any superhero movie, side superhero movie, when shit goes down, you're always like, why aren't they calling the big superheroes? If this thing that we're watching could end the world or blow up this country or whatever, why is this second-rate superhero on the job and not one of the big guys? And Fury addresses that by saying he's not going to call in the Avengers to help him because he doesn't want the Skrulls to have the ability then to impersonate them.
I somewhat see that logic. I still think if you can help defeat the threat and save lives, you do it. You don't worry about optics now, worry about optics later.
Because do they get all their powers also? Like if you look at Stephen Strange, all of a sudden you could be like, twisty, magicy.
So. Yeah. They already have super strength. I'm trying to figure out who even still is on Earth. Okay, Strange is. We know that. Or maybe, because there's an end credit sequence of the last Doctor Strange movie where you see Charlize Theron whisk him away.
Yes.
To a new adventure. So he might not be there now. I think the Hulk is still around. The Hulk's not there because in She-Hulk,
he left.
He goes into space.
Yeah, he's like, I got a thing.
Thor, he's interdimensional at this point. So
correct. He's got a stepdaughter, not stepdaughter, a foster daughter.
Yeah. So maybe there aren't any Avengers literally living on the planet.
Hawkeye,
Ant-Man, Hawkeye, Black Widow's dead. I guess new Black Widow.
Yeah, her sister.
Florence.
But that's all part of Thunderbolts. All those people.
Anyway, where I was building up to episode 2, the sit down between Sam Jackson and Don Cheadle. Mm-hmm. Sam Jackson is giving Don Cheadle shit for basically not just potentially selling out his country, but selling out his race. Playing the card that you and me, we had to work extra hard to get where we are. We didn't have rich daddies to appoint us to our positions of power. We had to wrestle the power away from the mediocre white guys, to which Don Cheadle responds with the line, "We didn't wrestle power away from mediocre men who don't look like us, just to hand it over to mediocre men who do," which on its surface is a big diss of Sam Jackson. He's saying, you're now mediocre. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is the way he phrases it. People who don't look like us, people who do. Like, he's also summing up Gravik's point of view. How they are literally wrestling power away from mediocre humans with no plans to hand it back anytime in the near future.
Okay, so War Machine is a Skrull.
Unless they're counting on us to speculate on that. And so he won't be the Skrull, and he'll be the POTUS. But definitely one of those two. You say POTUS. I'm going with Don at this point. Although Sam Jackson Skrull, that could be, if that's the biggest twist. Okay, that's
We already saw Sam Jackson Skrull.
Well, also at the end of this episode, too, we find out what his Skrull secret is.
He's got a Skrull fetish.
Well, he's married to one. Yeah. And I'm assuming they're implying he knows it because he's returning home. He's got the key to the place.
It's weird that she changes into a human form because it's like, can't you just love her the way she looks with with her slimy green skin and that musky scent of like old water? I don't know. That's what I think Skrulls smell like.
Unless they're trying to say he doesn't know. But that said, she was one of the Skrulls who we've seen in one of the 90s flashbacks. So he's got a history with her specifically.
Yeah, they do the head thing.
Yeah.
Before they suck face.
How dare you come into this office and bark at me like some little junkyard dog? I am the President of the United States.
What do we know about this guy? What can we figure out
About President Ritson?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that President Ritson, because he has James Rhodes as an advisor, that he probably got a lot of money from Tony Stark at some point. I'm going to say that that was his big money guy. I'm going to say that makes me lean towards this guy being a Republican because he sucks up so hard to a billionaire playboy.
And one of his chief advisors for seemingly everything is a literal weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. It's a literal product of the military-industrial complex. In fact, that should be a superhero name, military-industrial complex. MIX. Mix?
Mix?
Yeah, it doesn't work. What struck me about the president is walking through the first floor of the White House. You first see a picture of Jimmy Carter. Actually, they pass some 18th, like I think you see Rutherford B. Hayes. You see some older presidents that kind of pre-exist modern politics. So whose portraits don't mean much. But you do see Jimmy Carter, which is a statement. You don't put Jimmy Carter in your White House unless you are saying, I hope to one day be the ex-president that this guy was. Maybe not the president, but the ex-president.
Or maybe you look at it like, no matter how bad today was, I'm doing better than that guy.
Yeah. That said, while he's doing a very Sorkin-esque walk and talk with Cheadle through the West Wing, they go up the stairs, and you then pass a portrait of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. So unless by design, one floor is Democrats and one floor is Republican, having Carter in the same corridor as those two.
Well, what if, Eric, we only think Skrulls have been here since the 90s, but they actually have been here since the 60s, and Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan were all Skrulls. Maybe it's like at the Disney haunted house when they turn off the lights. They go from human looking to being Skrull looking.
Yeah, so the portraits are of no help unless he's a third party guy?
Doubtful. And I don't think that would be the case.
I mean, he's our first post-blip president. Blip is what in the MCU they call the moment that half the world's, technically the universe's population, but at least half the world's population came back into existence following the events of Avengers Endgame. So for 5 years, the world proceeded as if half of everyone you knew died, and all of a sudden they came back. And many of them no longer had a place to live. So he's the first post-blip president. Was he himself blipped? My guess would be no, because if you lost 5 years of existence, you might not be able to jump onto the national political stage quite so easily.
I don't know. That could be a good thing. It's like, you can't blame me for the last 5 years.
Yeah, but it's still a gap in your resume.
I wasn't
Those
here.
are never great. Yeah, how would you explain? So where were you from 2015 to 2020? Oh, I was non-existent.
I was neither here nor there.
So I'm going to guess he wasn't blipped out.
Do you think if somebody was blipped and they ran for president, their opponent would be like, they're not mentally stable? Would you play it against? Would you say, like, there was a reason he was chosen to be blipped?
Yeah. Thanos didn't choose the people. Hey, you don't know what Thanos did or didn't do.
You can't get into Thanos' head.
Yeah.
And then, actually, a Skrull is like, well...
Yeah, we could be. We now have technology to steal people's actual memories. Okay. But for realsies, in this world, I'm now disappointed that they went with Dermot Mulroney, a man who is truly of age to be president, when you have the perfect excuse to cast somebody who's like under 35 now. You could cast a 30-year-old and say, no, look at their birth certificate. They are technically 35 years old based on the year they were born. They just spent 5 years in a realm of non-existence.
In Blippi World.
Yeah, so you could have actually gotten around the whole age thing and cast like a young, hip, cool influencer Instagram president.
because when people are like in their early 30s, they're hip and cool.
How? Because I'm the goddamn president of the United States of America.
Okay, anything more about this guy, or should we hit the old end episode button and tune in next month where we can check in and see who was right and who was wrong?
I think you should snap. Isn't that what Thanos did?
Oh man, think of all the podcast duos that lost one of their
co-hosts?
Yeah.
In the middle of a podcast.
And they just thought their Zoom connection went bad. Yeah. Like, you froze up there. Or you ashed out.
It's all smoke. I can't see you.
So Secret Invasion, where's it going to go? How's it going to land? Stay with us, because we're watching it just like you all are.
I like that.
I've been Eric Buckman.
And I've been Ben Oren. This has been Fake Presidents.
Artwork by Ann Hecker.
Theme music by Gianni Sadoff.
We're on social media. If you can find us, follow us. But
if you could find us, we'll tell you exactly where they can find us, Eric.
You are not that thirsty. Well, what we will say is please review us on the podcast app of your choice, especially if your choice is Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, just go all the way to the bottom and you do 5 stars and then you say, I like this podcast. Because. I'll start the sentence. I like this podcast because.
Our email address is fakepresidents@gmail.com. We'd like to do a mailbag at some point because that means we don't have to watch a movie or a TV show. Not that we don't like doing it, but we have kids and jobs.
Yeah.
Why did I make it sound like doing this podcast is a chore? It's not.
No, we choose.
See y'all in July.
Bye.
You have any interest in going to see Rogers the musical at California Adventure?
Oh, they're doing that. Yeah, they're doing that. That looks like
they're
fun.
Doing a 30-minute version.
I liked the Hawkeye show when that was.
You liked
on.
it?
I did like it. I thought it was a great like Christmas series.
It was a good Christmas series. I thought it had some cool action sequences. Jeremy Renner is I love the fact that his body is worn out from having to literally save the planet numerous times, and he's not a superhero. He's injured in all the right ways. I love the hearing aid. It was a cool series. No, there hasn't been a series yet that has left me feeling like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that. They all have something interesting about them.
Loki. I did not like Loki.
You're the one person, because Loki tends, like, when people rank their list, Loki is like the consensus pick for like, oh, that's the one series that sets the bar that all series should match.
Loki made no sense. 1, 2, the special effects were shit. Like,
I love the production design.
I thought that show looked so terrible.
Interesting. That we'll have to agree to disagree.
Thank you for agreeing with me on that.